my first keyword is organizational need. Yeah, just telling you. And then I'm gonna go and search that up in the resources in the lecture notes. So I'm just control Fing, and I look up organizational need, and let's see where it is actually. Organizational with a Z. Okay. Because this is natural. Okay, look. I don't know if you can see what's happening, so I'll just describe it. But then I just controlled F for organizational need, and I only found one line, and it just says, discuss the organizational need for information security. So it doesn't.
So why are you control Fing the specific thing to find out its relevance?
No, to find out where it is, because I'm just basing it off a list of keywords. Now, oh yeah, right. So that's right. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, I need to find out why it's important. So I'm trying to dive into where it is in the resources and see if that information is there. And if it's not there, I'll go to Google or ChatGPT. Yeah. So I'm just trying to see where it is, because I can't remember what page it was on. So I just control F it. And that's pretty important because you never really go in the order that they give it to you anyway. So and I've only found one occurrence, and it's in the learning objectives. And so all it says is discuss the organizational need for information security. It doesn't really tell me why it's important. And now that I'm reading it, I realize it doesn't really mean much. It's like, based off that sentence, it means that information security is important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then, so organizational need is not something that's important. So I skipped it basically. So I'll go to the next one. Yeah. Information security program. That's my next keyword. So I do the same thing. I go back to the resources and I control F it. Information security program. Okay. So it's in the next learning objective, and it says, explain why a successful information security program is the shared responsibility of the organization's 3 communities of interest. That doesn't tell me much. So I control F it again, and it goes to another one where it says, the primary mission of an information security program is to ensure information assets and the systems that house them remain safe and useful. So based off that, that actually tells me why it's important. Does that make sense? Because it says the primary mission of the program is to basically ensure information assets and the systems remain safe and useful. So the program's important because it protects the assets. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense that it's what I was looking for as well? That one's quite relevant.
Can you repeat that part? I didn't get it.
Yeah. So how should we do this? Because no, it's better if you look at the Okay, no, wait. Let me change something. Is it possible if you can't really see the keywords properly? Hey, the resources.
No.
Okay, maybe if you unpin it, and I'll just tell you when I'm about to adjust the mind map or something like that, because it won't be that helpful. Yeah. So it'd be good if you could see the actual lecture notes somehow. Then we'll worry about how to record it properly later.
Okay, I think this is the lecture notes screen now.
Yep. See that?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's just do it. This will be way more useful. Don't worry about recording too much. Okay, so look, I'm on this keyword, or information security program, yeah? And then my goal is to find out why it's important. So I go back to the lecture notes. I've control F'd it, and this is the first thing that came up. It was just in the learning objectives. But then this is where it appears in the learning objectives. Look, information security program, but that sentence doesn't tell me much, because it's just it says you should be able to explain why blah 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 blah, but it doesn't directly tell me why the information security program is important. So then I'm not going to bother diving into it. So this is useless so far at this stage. Yeah. Then I go to the next occurrence, and I control F'd it. I jump to page 4, and it says the primary mission is to ensure information assets remain safe and useful. Okay, so that's important. That's why it's important. It's to ensure the information assets remain safe and useful. So that's good information for me at this stage, because now I know why that information security program is important.
Okay, I see.
Yep, because I'm on this keyword. I'm on this.
you went through the three things. It's like why it's important.
Yeah.
Like, it's not what it is, but it's why it's important.
Yep.
And there was two other things.
And how does it relate to all the other things that we've been talking about?
Why is it important? How does it relate to X?
Yeah.
Y,
Z. Yeah.
And
yeah.
you only need to know what it is. Like,
to,
you said something.
Yeah. To the extent that it helps you answer this question. So
But
sometimes,
not in detail.
yeah, sometimes you might actually have to figure out what it is very quickly so that you can answer why it's important. Yeah. But in this case, I don't need to know what it is. Like, I'm sure there is more detail to it. I don't know what the components of the program is, blah, blah, blah. But I know that it's some kind of program to basically protect assets. So that's enough. Is that cool?
I see.
Yeah. So that's enough. So now I'm thinking in my head about this keyword. It's important because it protects assets. That's all I need to know. And at this stage, I'm not going to ask how does it relate to everything, because I haven't really talked about other things yet to relate it with. So I'm going to move on. So there's nothing that I'm comparing it with yet, because it's only the second keyword, basically the first keyword. Cool. So now I'm moving on to threats.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I go back to the resources. Then I look up the threats. The first place it occurs is on page 3, but that just tells me list and describe the threats. That doesn't tell me why it's important. I'm trying to find out why it's important, so I'll keep going. Here we go. If no threats existed, then resources could be used to exclusively improve systems that contain and transmit information. This is sort of interesting. It's just like it should start making me think a bit. Does this tell me why it's important? I'm not sure, but maybe it's important because it drains resources. Because it said, if no resources existed, maybe we could just use the resources to exclusively improve the systems, rather than address the threats. That's what this sentence is telling me, but I don't know, it doesn't tell me exactly what I want, but it's sort of giving me a bit of information. But so then I'm going to keep looking, yeah? So next, threats and attack. Here we go. Where was it? Threats and attack. A threat is a potential risk to an asset's loss of value. That's on the first line. Does it tell me why it's important? Sort of, not really. I can't really tell you why it's important. Maybe it's just a risk. It's a risk of losing value. Cool. I move on. Control Fing. Management must be informed about various threats. Maybe it's important because it's something you need to tell management, or management needs to know about threats. That's actually quite legit, but I'm not sure that's what I'm after. But then that you need to be thinking that way, because I'm evaluating now. I'm like, okay, is the threat important because you might lose value? Yep, cool. Is it important because it's one of the things that management needs to know about, and you need to keep track of what management just need to know what they need to be on top on? Maybe. And I just keep going, yeah? So, what else? See, that's useless. It's just some thing at the bottom of the page. All these occurrences of threat. Just control Fing through the resource. Where else is it? Let's go back up. No. Forces of nature can present some of the most dangerous threats. This is definitely not telling me why it's important. It's giving me an example of a threat. A force of nature is an example of a threat, but it's not why it's important, so I'll keep going. That's cool.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
For example, if I was doing this for a neuroscience topic, right?
Yeah.
So the chapter would be like neuroanatomy, right?
Yeah.
So understanding different parts of the brain, right?
Yeah.
When I'm doing this thing, like getting the keywords,
Yeah.
right? Because it's such a big topic, right?
Yep.
Would I be finding through the whole textbook because there would be so many things to relate it to, or would I be finding it first with a chapter?
I think you try to do have a balance between it not being too short, but it not being too long. So you want like maybe like you want it so that you want the right amount of chapters so that the concepts are like logically related. because you are going to be trying to relate different concepts. But if you just do too little, you're not going to be able to see how it fits in the big picture. But if you do too much, it's going to be too overwhelming and too many keywords. So then, yeah, like for example, in this case, this is one week, and then it seems like it's 60 lecture slides. So I'm thinking, oh, dude, I think that's enough. Any more than 60 lecture slides, it's going to be tons. So I'm going to try study this alone. And if it ends up being too easy, or it's not as dense as it seems, then I'm going to next time do 2 lectures or 3 lectures. But if I'm like, this is deep stuff, it's actually much more complicated than it seems, then in the future, I'll break it up into 2, if that makes sense.
But like, even for this, like, I'd say, like neuroanatomy, that's in itself, like it does relate to the other chapters and stuff. Like, you have like neuroanatomy, then you have like sleep, and then you have like behavior, right? So the thing is like, there's going to be like parts of neuroanatomy which relate to sleep, right? There's going to be parts of neuroanatomy, right? But the topic of neuroanatomy itself is very dense because there's so many different aspects to it. So would you just go, I'd say, maybe the first time you'd go into that topic of neuroanatomy, but then maybe like after you've done neuroanatomy, you'd go neuroanatomy, sleep, and behavior.
Yeah, maybe, but then I reckon just try it. Just try it on something that seems like a good amount, and you'll sort of get used to it. You'll have a sense of whether that was too much or too little, I reckon. And you can just ask me after, like, just show me what you've come up with after you tried it. Yeah. All right. So, keep it going on threats. Forces of nature can present some of the most dangerous threats. That doesn't tell me why it's important. It just forces of nature just seems like it's an example of a threat. So cool, keep going. Employees are among the greatest threats to an organization's data. Again, that just tells me an example of a threat. Doesn't tell me why a threat is important. I still can't tell you. So I keep going. Many of these threats can be prevented. Cool, threats are preventable. Keep going. Threats can range from petty vandalism to organized sabotage. Those just tell me examples, or just tell me details. It just tells me more information about threats, but I'm trying to find why it's important. Cool. Okay. I can't exactly see why it's important yet, but that's okay. So where am I up to? Threats, common attacks. In this case, what I would do is just open this up. Why are threats important in cyber security? Sort of. Let me see what ChatGPT says, just out of curiosity. In that case, I have to go to my other one. Hold up. Okay. Why are threats important in cyber? Yeah, there you go. See, that's a very efficient example. It might be too long, actually. It already tells me in the first sentence. Threats are important because they help organizations identify risks and vulnerabilities. See? So, does that make sense? That's exactly what I was looking for. I wish the lecture told me that. Or it's important.
So
yeah.
Why is this important?
Yeah.
How does it relate to X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. So, it's important because it helps me identify risks and vulnerabilities. Cool. So, by the way, so far I've been studying, this is what I've got in my head. An information security program, that's important because it protects assets. A threat's important because it helps me identify vulnerabilities. Yeah. I remember from last time, I was like wondering, what's a vulnerability? It sounds a bit like technical jargon. So I just told myself it means it's like a weakness. Yeah. in my head, I'm thinking about a vulnerability as a weakness. It just sounds more simple to me. And then a threat's important because it helps me identify the weakness. Yeah? So cool. Keep going. If I feel like I need to write it down, then I would write it down, but so far it's okay. So so then here, common attack.
When you're saying write it down, what do you mean by write it down?
I mean commit it to a mind map, or maybe even a few dot points, but preferably to a mind map, even if it's very rough, just so I don't forget it. So now I'm on to attacks, common attacks. I'll go back to my lecture notes, wherever they are, and Control F. Look, okay, let me just find common. No, common's too common. Let's go back to it. I'm going to Control F attack. Okay, cool. So I'm back on this screen, and I'm on page 10. So see why it's so important to jump around? Now I'm reading it, my mind's actually turned on because I'm looking for why is an attack important? Like, I'm not that bored because I'm going in the order that I'm meant to go in, the order dictated by my curiosity and answering these questions. Why is it important? So why is an attack important? Okay. Well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, and it says it right here. It can damage or compromise your system, yeah? It can damage or compromise your system. So I don't really need to Google it, and I don't really need to ChatGPT it. It's pretty obvious. And here it just tells me 2 categories of attacks. It can be intentional and unintentional. So, what is the relationship between a threat and an attack is what I need to ask myself. Because now that I've just asked, why is an attack important? The answer was the attack's important because it could lead to damage. But then how does it relate to everything else I've been talking about before? So how does it relate to a threat? Well, I can try to think about it in my head, and then I would think that isn't an attack just an example of a threat? Would you think?
Yeah.
Yeah? So that's one way to talk about it. A threat is it's a way to identify weaknesses, and then I think perhaps your weaknesses can be attacked as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about the relationship. So if you have weaknesses, they might be exploited. Someone might attack you based on your weaknesses. And if you want to know what your weaknesses are, a way to help identify them is to consider the threats. And then one example I can think of is, say, like, you have a house. And this is just me explaining it now, like, because I did think about it in the time in between this call and last call. Because it doesn't sound that obvious. What's the difference between a threat, an attack, and a weakness, for example? But then, like, let's just say you have a house. The threat is the robber might come, right? Someone might try to break in. But if you have, like, a really good security system, there's no weaknesses to discuss. You don't have a weakness. But then if you have a house, then you're considering the threats. Oh, a robber might come. Then after that, you're like, oh, damn, my lock's broken. Well, there's your weakness. So that's how considering a threat will help you identify your weakness. So a threat is something that could happen, and by considering the threat, you may be able to consider your system and see where the weaknesses are. And there might not be weaknesses. So I think at this stage in last week's thing, I got to the stage where I started drawing it. So I might just start drawing on my iPad now, and I'll do it from scratch. So then,
should I skip them?
Sorry?
Should I pin it?
Yes, please. Yep.
So when you're going through these words, you're not going through every single keyword. You're just going through a few at a time.
Yeah, because
cognitive load.
I think so. Because then now I might think, oh damn, if I keep going, I'm a bit tired, or I might just forget what I discovered. That's why. Yeah. So the cognitive load is reasonable, but notice how I didn't just write it down immediately after every bit of information I got. That would be bad. Yeah. Okay. So you got the mind map?
Yeah. I got it.
Okay. Sick. So I might, and it's very rough at the beginning. It doesn't matter. I might just call it cybersecurity. Okay. And now I'm gonna say, we were talking about weaknesses. This might very well change by the end, but you got weaknesses. And then why were the threats important again? It's because they help me identify weaknesses. So threats are something that help me identify weaknesses. So I'm just going to put it under there. See that? And then I've got attacks.
So why did you put the word in the small letters?
Because it's just going under. So like normally it generally goes, this is the big heading, then these things are the big chunks, and identify goes underneath weaknesses, and threat is only important because it helps you identify the weaknesses, but it's just like it goes underneath it. Like as you go deeper in your mind map, it gets smaller, basically. So like if I was doing it technically, I might even want to do this. And then, I mean, this should be a bit bigger. Even weaknesses should be a bit bigger than identify. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. And cybersecurity should be even bigger. But like you edit it at the end anyway. It doesn't really matter. But like just so you get it. So the whole topic cybersecurity. There's two main things I've discovered so far. There's a potential to be attacked, and to basically attack your weaknesses. And then that's because it's high level. Then you go into the details a bit, which I've discovered. Oh, but in terms of the weaknesses, we want to know how you could identify them. And the way you do that is by looking at the threats, which is what could happen, the potential risks. Yeah? And then before I read in the attacks that you could have intentional and unintentional.
Up there, that attacks part. Go up. Nick. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
If you go up to the left when you wrote attack.
Yeah.
You know the upper left corner? Did you write something there?
No. That's my other mind map from last week. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go on. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And then the other thing which I talked about so far is protecting is your information security program. And then that was good because it protects your assets. And I don't really know too much about that so far, but I'm just going to say protect assets. And then I'm going to say information security program. So that's all I've got so far, and it's quite rough, but I reckon that's pretty good. Okay, so moving on. I'm going back to the laptop. So now I'm going to exploits. So exploits, I hit the resources, control effort, but I actually just see it on the screen. So an exploit is a technique used to compromise a system. Right, that makes sense, sort of. Let's see where else it appears in this, because I'm trying to look for why it's important again. Yeah. Okay. It's a technique used to compromise a system. Fair enough. So maybe it's used as part of an attack. Yeah. But I want to know why it's important. It's used to compromise a system. That seems pretty important. But then how is it related to threats and attacks? That's not so obvious, right? So these things seem like they're obvious, but then now if you ask me, well, what's the difference between an exploit and an attack? I don't really know. So then I have to search that up. I don't think I want to find it in the lecture notes. So then I'm going to go to ChatGPT. So what is the difference between an exploit and an attack in cyber security? Alright, so see how complicated it is? I don't actually want to read that, but then it says it here. No, it says it here. An exploit is a tool or code used in attack to take advantage of a vulnerability. Yeah. Okay. So do you see the relationship between an attack and an exploit then? It seems like an exploit is used in an attack. It's like a tool. It's a tool or code used in an attack. So an exploit, it has to go under attack. It's a tool of the attack. Any questions there?
No, I see that.
Okay, so then I sort of know why it's important. It's important because it's used to compromise the system. And how does it link to everything else? It links to the exploit links to attacks because it's the tool used in the attack. I have an idea in my head how to represent that, but then for the sake of cognitive load, I'm going to keep going, yeah? So,
yeah.
Vulnerability, that's good. I've already covered it, and this often happens. So then I don't need to do it. A vulnerability is just what I was calling a weakness. So moving on. So, a dev failure and errors. Okay, I forgot what that was about, so I'll go back to my lecture notes. Failure, errors. You see here, I'm looking at failures and errors because that was one of my keywords, and this is probably, and then I don't know what all this means. I don't really care. It seems like there's complicated numbers and stuff, and they seem like they're very detailed. And details is definitely not what I want to focus on before I built the overall logic of the topic. But what I am noticing is that all these failures or errors, what happens is what I notice is that it's under this heading. So maybe a failure or an error, it's a type of threat. Yeah, that's what I'm noticing. I'm not sure yet, but maybe because I'm trying. The keywords are failures and errors, and maybe they're just a type of threat. So I'll move on. Keep trying to find examples. Yep, they keep coming in these tables under the heading threats. Look, human error or failure is a category of threat. Okay, cool. So then, cool. I mean, that's fine. I think I get it. So, we've already talked about threats, and failures and errors, I guess, are just an example of a threat. So that's pretty easy. Yeah.
I'm just gonna go to the bathroom 1 second.
Yep. Okay, that's okay. Yep.
One second.
Yep. Yeah, sick. Okay. One thing I wanted to do actually. Okay, so I was on failures and errors, and then I think it's a type of threat. Yep. So I might do that, but what I've been doing recently actually is I might just check if I'm right with ChatGPT. So can I consider a software error or failure a type of threat in cyber security? Just to double check. Says no. But I'm still gonna. I think it's. I'm for now. I'm gonna consider it a threat. It says they're not considered direct threats. They can indirectly contribute to a security incident and should be addressed as part of the organization's overall cybersecurity strategy. Yeah. Okay. Weaknesses in terms of threats. We'll see. I'm moving on. Okay. Poor security efforts. Poor software security efforts. Security effort. List the common failures and errors that result from poor software security efforts. Okay. Let me think. So, you have failures and errors. What's the relationship? Here we can already see I was looking at poor security efforts. Why is it important? It seems like it's important because it causes the dev failures and errors. Does that make sense? Because it says the development failures and errors result from poor security efforts. So there's a relationship immediately. Poor security efforts cause development failures and errors, and development failures and errors, I've just concluded earlier, but I might change it later, that they're a type of threat or they're a type of weakness. Okay. Moving on. I might have to write something down soon, or I was going to forget. But then business. Okay, I had business as a keyword. So business needs first. Information security performs 4 important functions. Okay, cool. It protects the organization's ability to function. Okay. Protects data information, safe operation, and safeguarding. That seems pretty wishy-washy to me, so I might have to try and process it. But then, I think this is pretty significant side because it says the information security has 4 important functions. So that's almost saying it's important because it does all these 4 things. Yeah? So it's sort of telling me this is the purpose of cybersecurity. Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to start writing some stuff down because, all right, so where was I? I was doing, I was up to here, dev failures and errors. Yeah? And I'm going to say that comes under threat. I'm going to go back to the mind map now. So, yeah. Go back to the mind map, and I'm going to go under threat, and I'm going to write something down. And I'm going to say that this is a dev failure and error, and that results from poor security efforts. That's where that fits under at this stage. And then I'm up to business needs. And I'm going to say it seems like the business needs was, it's sort of, that slide was telling us the purpose of cybersecurity. So I'm going to modify this a bit. And I saw one of them was protecting assets. So I'm going to say, for now at least, put this under purpose. And see if I need to expand it later. But for now, I'm going to store it there. And one of the purposes was protecting the assets. And let me just check out what the other purposes were. Protect the organization's ability to function. Protect data and information. The second one and the fourth one seem the same to me, so I'll have to double check that. But safe operation of applications. Okay. Protect. No. Okay. So you got protect. What do you want to protect? Maybe it says here you want to protect. What do you call it? Data. Info. Assets. And so I'm going to get rid of assets above here. So the purpose is just to protect data, info, and assets. Because the second thing says you protect data and info. Here you're safeguarding. Doesn't safeguarding sounds close enough to protecting assets, and protect and the first one is talking about organization's ability to function, and this is sort of safe operation of applications. So so let's just say function. This is not the best, but it's what I can come up with now. Function smoothly. Let's talk about the apps and the organization. Okay. Does that sort of make sense how I've jumped to that?
I sort of lost you a little bit.
Yeah.
After, like, when you started linking the new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of lost you.
Okay.
A little bit.
So before I only had protecting assets on my diagram, yeah?
Yeah.
I had this.
Yeah.
But then now I'm on this slide and it's saying, and back then all I knew was that cybersecurity is important because it helps you protect assets. But in this slide it gives you more information. It says you can protect data, you can protect information, and you also protect assets. So then I just put protect as a big heading here, and then I put assets as one of them. Then I've also got, you could also collect data and you can also protect information.
I see.
Yeah. And then I saw here it says, why else is it important? It's because the organization needs to function smoothly. Maybe it helps the organization function. But here it says the safe operation of applications. So then I just said, well, another purpose is so that you can function smoothly in terms of the apps and the organization. But then that's not the best way to put it. I'm just going to put function smoothly. I'm just going to say smooth operation. Maybe that's better. Smooth operation. Is that okay?
I see it.
Yeah. So far that's what I've got. I don't see how this is completely related to this yet, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to fix it later and consider it later. But I've got two... Anyway. So, yeah. So if you ask me what the purpose of it is now...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the mind map, it's meant to be, like, I guess, rough.
Yeah. It's
also, like, concise as possible, but not focusing too much on it being concise, I guess.
Yeah.
So that you just get stuck on that topic.
Yeah. It's because I want high level first, and the details I go into at the end. So then, like, it's impossible to know how it fits cleanly from the beginning because you keep learning more and more information. So I'm putting something on paper, but the thing I'm making sure that I'm doing is actually asking those questions. Why is it important and how is it related? And then the reasons of importance, they're getting reflected by the diagram.
I see.
Okay. Moving on. So now we're actually, I had business needs, then what I put down last time, protecting the organization's ability to function, data and info, and assets. I've already covered that, haven't I? I actually covered that accidentally when I went through the last slide. So like sweet, skip all that. Enable safe operation of systems and applications. I'm like, sweet. Done that already, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Threats I've talked about. Threats were a way to identify weaknesses. Attacks I've talked about. Exploits I've talked about. Exploits are used in an attack. Actually, I forgot to write that down. So here I might just, this is what I did last time. I just do it for the sake of it. So I got a guy here and he's got like, I don't know, a hammer. That's the exploit. This is the attacker. Because I remember before it said the exploit is the tool used by the attacker. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did it say again? It said an exploit is a tool or code. Yeah, technical tool or code used in an attack. Anyway, so that's cool. Vulnerability I've talked about. Compromises to intellectual property. Cool. Intellectual property. Let's have a look. I have a feeling this is going to be easier than I thought because the first year subject doesn't seem that very dense so far, and I'm always done all the keywords. So, compromises to intellectual. Yeah. Compromises to intellectual property. So, here it seems like it's a category of a threat. Great. I know what intellectual property is, so I don't need to look it up. Compromises to intellectual property. Yeah, cool. Nothing great. It seems like it's a type of threat. What's something that could happen? My intellectual property could get compromised. Great. Illegal taking of another. Yeah. That's just an example of a threat. And I could write it down, but I might not need to because it sounds like it's a bit too detailed. Like, you see how on my diagram, I've got weaknesses, then I've got threats, and then, yeah, that was one of the examples, but I can come back to it later because I don't want to prioritize the details. So, yeah, great. I know where it fits in the big picture. It's just a type of threat. Cool. Intellectual property breach. It sounds like another threat. A watchdog organization. Let's have a look. Pretty sure it's the same. 2 watchdog organizations investigate software abuse. Yeah. Why is that important? It also, why are these organizations important? Well, maybe they prevent these attacks. They investigate the abuse. So, why are these organizations important? It's because they will... I could just say they're important because they're organizations, but it's a bit cheap, but it would work. They're important because they investigate attacks or they investigate abuse. Yeah. So, attacks.
So are you back on them?
No, not yet. No, I'm just thinking, why are the organizations important? They're important because, I don't know actually, why are watchdog organizations important? I'm not sure actually. Let me ask, why are watchdog organizations important in cyber? Cool. They promote more secure cybersecurity landscape. So I would say they're important because they help prevent attacks.
So Nick.
Yeah.
Just a question.
Yeah.
So whenever you're looking to answer the question for yourself,
right?
As to what something is and how it's relevant, you want to go to the most concise explanation.
You want to, that's right. Otherwise, you're having to dig through information which is not interesting, and it might make you fall to the lower levels of learning. If they're trying to tell you the details and stuff, it's going to screw you. Because then you're doing lower level learning. I want to know why it's important. I don't want to go through, I don't want to have to, that's right. I'm trying to find the answer to that. So, but and then the thing is, this is how I do it if I'm doing it properly. Because this thinking that I'm doing now, I'm actually not sure why it's important, but this is the actual evaluating. So it's Chaim Bloom's taxonomy and it's cognitive load. So if you actually care about a subject, you want to be thinking about these properly. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter that the answer doesn't come right away. You are trying to get the most concise one, but then you're having to evaluate in your mind. So why is the organization important? Maybe it prevents it, but then I'm thinking that's not completely right, because I think after an attack has happened, it seems like the watchdog organization will get involved as well. So then, you want to talk about prevention and the response, and I guess that's why it's important. So I'm just thinking, how can I put this in? So you got the purpose of cybersecurity, and then you've got attacks, weaknesses, prevention and response. No, let's do it this way, and then I might change it later, but I think it's good for now. So I'm going back to the diagram, yeah? You cool?
To the mind map?
Yep.
You're back to the mind map?
Yep. All right. You want it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just found out that watchdog organization, why do I think it's important? I think it's good for preventing attacks and also addressing attacks that have happened. Does that sound fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I'm going to go into attacks and try add it there. So you see how I've done attacks so far? It's quite superficial. All I've got are intentional attacks and unintentional attacks. So I need to clean this up a bit for now, just a bit. And I might just say that those are types of attacks. See that? So when I talk about attacks, I can tell you different types. And I'm sure those aren't great ways to categorize types, but it's just what I have so far. Yeah? Some attacks are intentional, some are unintentional, but I want to talk about how to prevent attacks and how to respond to attacks. And at the moment, I'm going to say that's with the watchdog organization. Is that cool?
Hello.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah. Yep. I'm there.
Hello.
Yeah, what's up?
It's dropped out.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
It's like 30 seconds.
That's alright. Yeah.
No, it dropped out. Like as in I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
Is this because it's getting towards the end of the meeting or something, like the limit?
It might be actually.
Oh, there, it's fine.
Okay, so yeah, let me go back to what I was. Let me go back here, and then I've now when I searched up the watchdog organizations, all I came up with, which I'm happy with for now, is to say that they're important because they help prevent an attack or respond to an attack. So then I had to modify my attack node because before all I had was intentional and unintentional coming out of it. But now I had to make a bit of room. So I just temporarily put, you can have types of attacks, intentional and unintentional. For the sake of putting types there, because now I've got, you might want to talk about responding to an attack and preventing an attack. At least I can tell you why it's important now. That's much better than saying, because in the watchdog thing, it says there are 2 watchdog organizations that investigate software abuse. Well, it tells me the name of the organizations. I don't care about the names. I can memorize that later, right? But then, now if you ask me why it's important because they will help you prevent your attacks and respond to them. And they're part of attacks. And yeah, cool. And attacks at the moment is part of the cybersecurity heading. At the moment, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to keep going on with the keywords.
Yeah.
And now I'm on copyright law. So let's go back to the lecture. Copyright law. Enforcement of copyright law has been attempted with technical security measurements. I have an idea of why this is important. I just think it helps prevent attacks or deter attacks. But I'm gonna and then when I try to control F this, I can't find anything else. So I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. So, copyright law is important because they try to prevent attacks. I don't think my uses of attacks is completely right. Yeah, it's okay. I see. Okay. Let me go back to the lecture slides. Okay, look. This is what the ChatGPT said, so it's good. It said not really. It's not really related to attacks, but it says it can protect intellectual property, right? You there?
Yeah.
Okay. it says it can help protect intellectual property, and when I go back, it is under the intellectual property heading, right? Which I didn't notice. So let's think about this. So copyright laws protect your intellectual property, but then now I need to ask, why is intellectual property important?
It's breaking up.
Okay, how about now?
Sorry, what did you say? Oh.
I said I needed.
Yeah, it's fine now, but the last one.
I said copyright law protects intellectual property, but I need to know why intellectual property is important, because I haven't asked that before. Intellectual property. You can have attacks. Because if someone takes your intellectual property, it's not really an attack, is it? An attack is like when you're attacking a system. Intellectual property is just like you're stealing, right?
Yeah, but I guess intellectual is
so
stealing. I don't know. Am I meant to contribute to this?
No, if you want, or like I'm just thinking, I might want to talk about theft and attack. That seems more correct to me, and it doesn't matter that it's not completely correct, because I can still skin it up at the end. But like for now, I'm gonna modify this diagram. I'm going back to the diagram now, and I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna modify the diagram a bit and say theft. And then here I want to say prevention. And how do you prevent IP, intellectual property theft? Copyright law is one way. Cool. Is that sort of okay?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Good enough for now. Copyright law. It's important because it prevents intellectual property theft. And then intellectual property theft is obviously something you don't want. So that's cool. But why does the watchdog organization appear under that then? Software abuse. I'm gonna think that the watchdog is actually is for intellectual property. I'm gonna assume that now. So I want to move it over here. Worry about it later. So the watchdog organization, because it was under the because in the lecture notes it's under compromises to intellectual property, I want to assume that the watchdog organization is talking about intellectual property theft. Cool. I can check that later. So going on with the keywords, almost there. Deviations in quality of service. What does it say?
It's a threat. Deviations in quality of service.
Deviations in quality of service. What does that even mean?
It says deviations in quality of service.
It says deviations in quality of service from a power provider.
Deviations in equality of service.
Deviations in equality of service.
Information systems depend on blah blah blah.
Information systems depend on blah blah blah.
I think it just means when your internet's bad.
I think it just means when your internet's bad, or you've got other services.
The quality you can't control.
And then the quality you can't control it.
Yeah, because it says it depends on successful operations of other systems.
Depends on successful operations of other systems.
It's talking about your internet, your communications,
it's talking about your internet, your communications,
power,
your electricity, your power. That might be something.
And I mean, I saw it earlier in this lecture.
And I mean, I saw it earlier in this lecture slide.
It comes under the general heading of threats.
It just comes under the general heading of threats again. So I know what it is, but it's just a category of a threat. It's something that could happen. Maybe internet becomes crap.
So again,
maybe you get a black.
In terms of my overall diagram,
in terms of my overall
diagram,
it's something that comes under threats. And threats is already sort of. I know where it fits into it, so I'm not that worried. I don't need to go down a rabbit hole. I can just learn that later. I can memorize it later. Or if I need to look, or it's quite conceptual, I can go deeper into that by collecting more keywords, and I'll do it properly later. For now, I'm happy to just park it because I know it's a category of threat. So I'll move on. Espionage or trespass. I feel like this is getting easy then, because this is all just types of threats. It's easy. Skip. I like it when that happens. Expert hackers or noob hackers. Expert. Espionage. Look, that's even better. Espionage or trespass. I just knew that was a category of threat. These are just this just goes under that. I've sort of stopped asking why it's important, because I've noticed we're getting to the details and it's sort of obvious. It's important because it comes under threats. Threats help you understand weaknesses, and weaknesses are things that get attacked. We established that earlier, but then now these things are just like little details in terms of why I've already established why it's important. So espionage or threat is just an example. The espionage or trespass is an example of a threat, something that could happen. And if you want to know a bit more about it, you could say some of them are experts and some of them are just unskilled hackers, but then they still might cause damage. But like that I can go into later. I don't actually. Well, I'm not worried if I forget it, because I can just look back when I edit when I do another another round of my mind mapping. I can just add it in, but then so now I'm okay. I can leave it, but maybe I'll put it in. It's not very important because it's sort of lower level, and I'm trying to go high level for the high level sort of logic of the subject right now. Password attacks. I think that's just a type of attack. Let's have a look. Yeah, look, it's another type of espionage or trespass. Password attacks. Cool. Forces of nature. That's a type of threat, like an earthquake happening, damaging your hardware. Human error. That's a threat because it's in that table. So I'm gonna skip it. Yeah, I want to do that another time. It seems like a lot of this lecture slides talks about the type of threats. So obviously that's important. So I might do another session if I was studying this to expand on the type of threats and categorize them a bit, but not now because I want to go high level, get the overall thing first. Social engineering, another type of threat. Actually these look like they're all type of threats, so I might just park it and look at the overall mind map and see if I can tidy it up a bit, and I might just park it there. So let's have a look. So you got cyber security, you got attacks and your weaknesses. Okay, that's fine. Look how easy it is. That was 60 pages. It seemed hard, but now it seems pretty easy. How do we do this? I'm back on the mind map and I'm looking at how to make it clean because it's not as intuitive as it could be. So now I'm asking again, what's the relationships and have I grouped it the right way? Have I grouped it by the best way? I'm trying to evaluate whether my mind map is grouped correctly and what are the more relationships. So like IP, intellectual property theft and attacks, they seem like they could be related somehow, don't they? Like they're just like, I'm just going to call them crimes because that's intuitive. Like, you know, someone could attack you or they like hurt you or they could steal from you just in real life. This is just cybersecurity. So they're both example of crimes. So I'm going to modify this a bit. I'm going to just crop my mind map a bit. And I'm going to say, well, I'm going to talk about the crimes. And we could talk about IP theft.
So is this you reiterating the mind map?
A bit, yeah. It's me tidying it up a bit. Yep. I've considered the keyword thing done, at least the first pass. So attacks. So there could be two types of crimes. I'm just going to copy and paste what I had before up here. So all I did was basically combine theft and attacks underneath one heading. So that's all I've done here. Nothing complicated. I've just added crimes, if that makes sense. And attacks. I might even just put all of this under attacks because it seems, if I want to expand onto attacks, I could maybe do something like that, and it seems pretty reasonable still. And you see how, does that make sense a bit? What's happened here?
You're sort of like...
I'm trying to group them. So I asked, how was theft and attacks related? I was like, how are they related? They're both crimes. Okay, then let's put them both under crimes to make it a bit more simple.
I see.
That's all.
I see.
And then, because now the whole topic, as it is, it's only got 2 nodes. It's so simple. What do I know about cybersecurity? Well, you want me to talk about the purpose? That's one thing I could go into. Or I can talk about the 2 type of crimes. There's only two blocks I need to remember. Then each block expands, but then if he says you should only have 2 to 4 blocks, and then for each, and then if you have 5 or 6, try to group them together so that's easier to remember and you've consolidated it. So in this topic, all I need to know from a high level is I can talk about the purposes and I can talk about the crimes. Yeah. If you want me to go into the crimes, well, there's theft, there's attacks. Then I go into it further and further, but it's quite easy to remember that way. If there's only a few things at each level, and when you go into it, there's only 2 to 4 things. You want me to go into it again? There's only 2 to 4 things, not 10 things. No more than 4. Yeah. And this seems a bit strange because when I'm talking about the attacks, underneath it, I've got attack leads to weaknesses. So I might just change this attack because then I'm repeating it twice. I might just change this guy into an attempt. Does that make sense? It's an attempt at an attack, perhaps. It's not the best, but then you might want to prevent people from attacking. You might want to respond to it, and there are 2 types. They're intentional, unintentional, and the weaknesses again. You can identify the weaknesses by looking at the threats. Cool. Anything else? How do the purpose and how does the purpose relate to the crimes? Well, yeah, I don't think we need to go too complicated here. I think that's okay. If I want to be a bit cheap, what's the relationship between the purpose and the crimes? Well, if you want to protect... You could do something like this if you wanted, although I'm going to switch this guy over here. And I'm going to switch those 2 branches around, basically. Before I just had smooth operation on the right and protect on the left. But I'm going to do that. Just because I think protecting has something to do with crimes. So the purpose is to protect... Yeah. Protection from crimes. Is there a way to connect that without stuffing the whole thing up? No, I'm not going to do it because it looks fine already. Okay, so there's a few more steps left, but I just wanted to ask, do you have any questions? Does it seem like it's going okay?
Are you going to get into the things that you need to memorize at the end?
Yeah, that's easy. So I can, but how about besides the stuff I need to memorize? Does it seem okay? Like, there is one more step for this mind map because it doesn't look that pretty yet. But like, I would say even if I stopped it here, that was pretty successful in terms of knowing the topic. I reckon. But do you agree, or are there any concerns?
Sure. But I'd say when you're actually sort of restudying it,
yeah,
do you go in the same way, or
no,
what do you
you don't. Now from now on, it's just revision, or what you do is you go into more keywords, and then you do the exact same thing on the same lecture slides if you need to go deeper, because there might be keywords now that I might think are relevant, but before they seem too expert. I just pulled out the ones that seemed like they were most high level and relevant, but I might go into it and see if there's anything else I want to know.
So you go in with the keywords again and you make a new mind map.
No, not a new mind map. You adjust this one.
You adjust this one.
Yeah. So now I might go collect another 20 keywords if I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Maybe to do with the type of threats, because I was talking about that so much, and I might need to develop. The threats region of my mind map.
I see.
Yeah. But no, if you're restudying it, that just means revision. So there are different effective ways to revise it. One way would be to try and teach an imaginary person. So, and you wouldn't want to revise it on the same day. You want to revise it tomorrow, or no, maybe the same day at the end of the day, and a week later. Because then I just close this whole thing, and I see if I can reproduce it, or I see if I can teach someone. And I should be able to do it okay. I'd be like, okay, in the subject of cybersecurity, there are two main things you need to talk about. You want to know the purpose of the cybersecurity in the first place, and I want to talk about the type of attacks. They're pretty important. So the purpose, you need to protect what's important to you. What's important to you, your data, the information, and also your assets. But you want to provide the smooth functioning of your apps and also your organization as a whole. That's the purpose of cybersecurity. Now let's go into the type of attacks. And I'm not even looking at my notes at the moment. Let's look at the type of attacks. Well, like normal attacks, there can be theft. They could try to steal something from you. In this case, it's intellectual property, since we're talking about cybersecurity, as opposed to something physical. Or you could be talking about actual attacks. Yeah? And as far as I know at the moment, attacks can be intentional and unintentional. But what they're going to try to attack are your weaknesses, right? So it's very important to know how to identify your weaknesses, and that's by considering threats. By thinking about what could happen, you think about, could there be an earthquake? Could be a blackout? Could your internet get slow? You consider the threats, and then that's going to give you an idea to know what the weaknesses are of your system, right? And then in terms of preventing these attacks, well, you need that information security program, and also there are 2 watchdog organizations that will help you out as well. Yeah, that's a revision session like that. And then if you do it a week later, that will be really helpful, because there will be bits that you forget, and then you go back and you revisit it. But it helps you target your weaknesses as well.
I think the interesting thing is, right, is like, for me, like, I've got really short time frames for my thing, so I have to do a subject every 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, it's like, there'll be like a specific topic, like module 1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it will be like the exam.
Yeah.
And for that,
yeah,
is on the Sunday, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, I'd have to reply it more times, right? It wouldn't be that, like a revision schedule like that. It would be like, maybe like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
you might have to revise more in a more compressed way.
Yeah,
it's fine. Yeah, you just modify it according to your needs. But then there are proper revision methods, and one of the really good ones is teaching an imaginary person. Another good one is try to reconstruct a mind map without looking at it and see what you miss. But you never want to look at your notes, because that's just recognizing. So there's recognizing, there's recalling, and there's retrieving, and there's reconstruction. Reconstruction is the best, and recalling is very good too. But recognizing is crap, because you read it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I already knew it, but you're not recalling it at all. And you're meant to do it in a way that you didn't do originally. So it's called interleaving. So I just explained it to you in a way, but that wasn't the way I learnt it. So that was good, because I'm hitting it from a different angle, making more connections. Or I might try to come up with challenge questions. That's also interleaving it, because it's making me think in a different way. I didn't use that mindset when I was learning it. Think of challenge questions or think of exam questions. It really forces you to think of and make more connections with the topic and identify your weaknesses.
When I think of the exam question,
yeah,
right? How do I answer that exam question without looking at the notes or just like through the mind map?
That's a different story. Come up with a question first. That already serves as a revision, because it's helping you evaluate and think. And then, then you can look at the notes. Go into your notes and answer them, or go and chat GB3 and answer them. That's fine. Yeah.
So when I answer it, do I write it down, or am I just?
I'm not sure. Like, I haven't actually done exam questions myself. I might just write it. I actually have for work, but I just write it down, and I save them in reference notes. I actually type them out, and But I was doing it because I anticipate what they're going to ask me in the meeting. So I was just going to look at it before the meeting just to make sure I knew. But then it'd be good to get to the stage where you can expand on it and just recall it. But yeah, I could help you with that. Just ask me when time comes. I haven't gone too deep into that yet. Yep.
Because it's for my thing, it's very much about, I guess, recall, right? Like when you're doing a quiz at the end of the week, that's about understanding that there's a lot of recall involved, right? So like, I'm just wondering, like, okay, so there's a mind map thing which helps you understand, right, and recall, right? But then there's like sort of fine-tuned things which you need to recall, right? You know, like a specific region of the brain.
Yeah, so
right?
If it's not logical, like, you should not need to try and recall that there are two types of attacks. As an example here, that is so obvious, right? You don't try to put those on flashcards. You should not have to try and memorize the purposes of a cybersecurity. That's too easy. That is so logical here. Everything I wrote on the diagram has nothing to do with memorization. That should just be in your head. Or that should one revision session. You shouldn't need to be writing it down or putting it on flashcards. It's more like, and the fact that an exploit is used in an attack, that's not memorizing. That you just need to be logical and understand the system. But like, what were the name of the watchdog organizations? That goes on flashcards. Yeah. That goes on flashcards. Maybe little details and percentages. Oh, thanks, man.
Hello.
Yeah. Hey.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm coming. Something. Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, the memorization stuff. I think the more finer details, I'll tell you about them later because I need to go to lunch.
Okay. No, sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. Hope that was helpful. But like, if you got concerns, just message them to me or let me know because I think you're trying to ask something else, which might be more relevant to you. But this, I would say, helps a lot.
Well, I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna try it out now.
Yeah.
What's this program you use? What's it called?
Oh, it's on my iPad. It's called Concepts, but it's only for iPad. Oh, it's for Android a bit too.
What's the program?
Concepts.
Concepts.
Yeah, it's just called Concepts app.
Oh yeah, okay, you can get sweet.
Cool.